Hello, this video is going to give an example of creating a switch statement. A switch structure tests a single variable against a series of exact matches. So whereas in the if statements we could use a range, like if some number was greater than 20, whether it be 20.5, 20.645, 792, whatever the number is, any range of numbers, if statements are great for that. If you have an exact match that you're trying to test against, so you're expecting the user to input one of a small finite set of choices, then a switch structure is an alternative to the if statement. A switch structure uses the keywords switch, case, break, and default. You must use the keyword break at the end of each case. And if none of the cases match what the user input, then the program will execute whatever you have in the default block at the bottom of your switch structure. A switch doesn't strictly have to have a default case, but it's good programming practice to always include one, and it's good for catching errors. So here's an example of a switch statement that comes from the textbook. In this example, the user inputs a number, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Now, importantly, the program is only expecting the user to input one of those very 4 specific cases, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So you could do this with an if statement or a series of if statements. If year is 1, write freshman, else if year is 2, write sophomore, else if year is 3, write junior, else if year is 4. That gets to get kind of long and tedious. So a more efficient way to do that is with a switch statement. You use the switch keyword, and then in the parentheses, you put the variable. Usually this is a variable that was from user input, and it compares what the user input to the various cases. So if the year variable is holding the value of 1, then the program will execute the code that is written after case 1, and so on and so forth. There is a special case here. If you leave a case blank, it will go to the next. It will execute what is in the next case after that. So in this case, we have some code for case 1, some code for case 2. We left case 3 blank, meaning that if the user inputs the number 3, then it will, if the value of the variable year is equal to 3, then it will just skip down to the next case, which is 4, and it would write upper class. Then in the default, you just put what happens if none of those cases are met. So if the user inputs any number besides 1, 2, 3, or 4, then it will jump down here and say invalid year. So that default case is really good for catching mistakes. People always make mistakes when they're inputting values. So you can use decision logic in your if-else, using the else in your if-else statements, or using the default case in a switch structure. So let me jump over to Visual Studio, and we will do an example of a switch structure. So I will create a new project. And Windows Forms app, I'm going to call this grade ranges. And I'm going to have this saved in my code folder. And what this application is going to do is the user is going to input a grade, and then the application will tell them what score they have to get in order to earn that grade. So on this form, I'm going to put a text box. And a label instructing the user what to put into that text box. So for that label, I'm going to change the text property to be, what grade do you want? And then the user would input A, B, C, D, or F. I don't know why you would put an F. Yes, I would like an F, please. I'm going to change the name of this text box, select the text box, go to the name property, and change it to grade text box. I'm going to put a button on here. I'm going to rename it the OK button. And in the text property, I'm going to change it to say OK. So the user can type a letter and then click OK. And then down at the bottom, it will give them some information about that grade. So that label I'm going to put as result label. And the text of that label, I'm going to actually leave it blank at first. Now, if I double click on my OK button, it will generate the OK click event, the OK button click event method. And in here, I'm going to create a switch statement. So I'll type the keyword switch. Actually, before I even do that, I'm going to collect input from the user. So I'm going to have a string variable. I'm going to call it grade. And that's just going to be, I'm just going to get that string, that piece of text from the text box. So the grade text box text property. Here I don't have to convert it because it's not a number, it's an actual letter. So we're just going to save it as a string called grade. Okay, then in my switch statement, I'm going to put the variable that I'm comparing to my cases. So the grade variable is what I'm going to compare to the cases that I'm about to input. So I have a case where the user would input the letter A. And in that case, the result label text will be you need to earn 90%. And then a break. Then I'm going to have another case for if the user inputs B, if the grade variable matches this value, then I'm going to have the result label text say you need to earn 80%. And then my break keyword, don't forget the break keyword. And then I can go through all of the different cases that I might expect. Break. And case. And then at the bottom, I'm going to have my default case. So if the user inputs anything else, then I'm going to have the application display that's not a real grade, and break. Okay, now I will test this out. What grade do you want? A. Okay, you need to earn 90%. What grade do you want? F. You need to earn 0%. G. That's not a real grade. So it works.